Section 1. The night the skies became transparent. January 11th, 1944, 3:42 a.m. Luftwaffe Airfield, Saint-André-de-Loire, northern France. A razor-sharp wind cuts across the tarmac as the darkness trembles with the sound of idling Daimler-Benz engines. Frost clings to the fuselage of a row of Bf-109 G6 fighters, their silhouettes barely visible beneath the dim blue lamps used for blackout operations. Ground crews move like ghosts, silent, fast, and tense. Every sound is muffled by fog rolling low over the field. Oberleutnant Karl-Heinz Bremer, a 26-year-old Luftwaffe Staffelkapitän, pulls on his flight gloves with trembling fingers. The air tastes of gasoline and cold metal. He leans close to his mechanic, whispering, "Diesmal überraschen wir sie." This time we surprise them. Tonight's mission is supposed to be a perfect ambush. At 0400 sharp, Bremer and his squadron will take off under cover of darkness to intercept an incoming American bomber stream. Bombers that German High Command believes are still hundreds of kilometers away. Bremer lifts himself into the cockpit. The canopy frame is icy beneath his hands. He checks his Revi 16B gun sight, adjusts his oxygen mask, and listens as his radio crackles to life. Störsender aktiv. Jamming active. German electronic warfare crews have activated their ground jammers meant to confuse Allied radar. In theory, the Americans shouldn't see anything. But what Bremer doesn't know, what no one in the Luftwaffe yet understands, is that by tonight the Americans aren't relying on the old British radar chains anymore. They're using SCR 584 microwave radar, H2X ground mapping radar, and long-range airborne radar platforms that can track a single fighter the moment its wheels leave the runway. The Germans are about to learn the truth the hard way. At 3:53 a.m. the squadron receives the signal. Alle Maschinen, vorbereiten zum Start. All aircraft, prepare for takeoff. The engines roar to life, flames licking from exhaust stacks as mechanics jump back from the heat. Bremer's heartbeat rises to match the vibration of the engine. He lowers his canopy. The world shrinks instantly into the tight steel frame of the 109 cockpit. Rolling fog parts slightly as the first fighter taxis forward. And then, the first American fighters arrive, without warning, without hesitation, without mercy. 4 P-61 Black Widow night fighters, guided by radar operators miles away, dive out of the darkness like predatory birds. Their twin-engine silhouettes are invisible in the fog. The only warning is the sudden streak of tracer fire slicing through the night. Achtung! Jäger über Platz! Fighters over the field! Panic detonates across the runway. Ground crew scatter. Mechanics dive behind fuel drums. One Bf-109 explodes before its wheels even leave the ground, its wreckage lighting the fog in a hellish glow as shards of aluminum rain down. Bremer's stomach drops. How? They weren't supposed to be here yet. The Black Widows circle overhead, perfectly coordinated. It's as if the Americans knew the exact second each German plane would attempt to take off. Because they did. Hundreds of kilometers away, U.S. radar screens had lit up the moment the Bf-109 engines started turning. The heat signatures, propeller motions, even the slight metal vibrations, all detected, tracked, and relayed to airborne interceptors. The Americans saw everything. Bremer slams his throttle forward. His fighter lurches down the runway, the wheels bouncing on uneven, frozen asphalt. Above him, twin streams of .50 caliber fire rake across the tarmac. He whispers a final prayer. Just get airborne. Just get airborne. A fireball erupts to his left. Another Bf-109 disintegrates under cannon fire. Bremer lifts his nose into the air, and that is the moment he realizes the truth. The Americans aren't reacting. They are waiting. They knew. As he claws into the sky, chased by radar-guided predators, Bremer's world collapses into terror and disbelief. For the first time since the war began, he understands. The Luftwaffe can no longer hide. The sky is no longer dark. The Americans can see them before they even take off. Section 2. The Silent Eyes of the Allies. January 11th, 1944. 4:07 a.m. U.S. Radar Station, RAF High Wycombe, England. The air inside the underground radar bunker is warm and buzzing with electricity. Rows of glowing oscilloscope screens cast ghostly green light across the faces of American and British technicians hunched over their consoles. Cigarette smoke curls lazily beneath low-hanging lamps, mixing with the constant hum of machinery. Lieutenant Sarah Whitmore, a 23-year-old radar operator from Boston, adjusts her headset and taps the edge of her CRT display. Tiny blips dance across the circular scope, each one a life in motion somewhere over France. She narrows her eyes. There, a cluster of faint returns, barely visible, but moving. Got them, she says quietly. Saint-André-de-Lure, multiple engines, spinning. Her finger traces the blips as they brighten and break away from the runway. Birds off the ground, now. Captain James Alden, the coordinating officer, steps up behind her. Confirm type? With engine signature patterns this tight, BF-109s or 190s, fighters, not bombers. Alden nods, turns to a second operator. Patch this to Airborne Intercept Group, priority code. Across the bunker, a sergeant flips a switch and leans into his microphone. All Black Widow units be advised. Hostiles departing runway 03, vectoring now. Within seconds, a full radar-to-fighter communication chain snaps into motion. Sea-level antennas, long-range microwave towers, airborne radar observers, and encrypted teleprinter lines feeding data across England. What the Germans believe to be jamming barely scratches the surface. Their technology is built for the world of 1940. The Allies are already living in 1944. 30 miles east, over the English Channel. Inside the P-61 Black Widow Night Hunter II, radar operator Sergeant William Red Hanlon watches his scope pulse with crisp clarity. His SCR-720 radar shows the German fighter's exact heading, altitude, and climb rate. Even the runway length they used can be inferred. Targets moving northwest, Angels 1.5 tight cluster, he calls to the pilot. Captain Lewis Hensley, veteran of 37 night kills, grins beneath his oxygen mask. So they're trying for the bombers again, poor bastards. The Black Widow banks sharply. Rain streaks across the canopy as clouds peel open, revealing the faintest glow of burning aircraft far below. Hanlon adds, "Looks like they didn't expect us." "They never do," Hensley replies. He nudges the throttle forward. The twin Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines howl with climbing power. Even without moonlight, the American night fighters move with eerie certainty. They don't need to see. They are guided by a technology the Germans still believe is impossible. Back in France, Oberleutnant Karl-Heinz Bremer struggles to steady his fighter. His instruments flicker from electrical interference. His ears ring with radio panic. "Wir werden abgefangen! We're being intercepted!" But it makes no sense. How did the Americans know? They launched their attack at the exact second Bremer's squadron began to taxi. Not a minute too early, not a minute too late. He banks hard to avoid a stream of tracer fire ripping past his wingtip. A Black Widow slides overhead like a shadow in the sky, its radar-guided persistence making it impossible to shake. "Impossible," Bremer mutters. "They're finding us in the dark, through fog, without lights." And then the truth hits him like a blow. This isn't skill or luck. This is something else. Something watching them. A technology that sees through night, through fog, through speed, through every trick the Luftwaffe has left. Bremer's voice cracks over the radio. They know where we are before we even take off. The silence that follows is more terrifying than the gunfire. For the first time, the Luftwaffe pilots understand. They are flying blind into an enemy that can see everything. At RAF High Wycombe, Lieutenant Whitmore updates the tracking board. First wave neutralized, she reports. A few got airborne, but won't last long. She takes a sip of cold coffee, unaware of the terror unfolding hundreds of miles away. To her, it's just numbers moving across a screen. To the Luftwaffe, it's the night they realize surprise is dead. The radar war has begun. Section 3. The Invisible Net Tightens. February 2nd, 1944. 5:12 a.m. Luftwaffe Air Base, Chèvre, Belgium. Snow crunches under Captain Eric Merton's boots as he walks toward his Bf-110 night fighter. The sky is a silver sheet of pre-dawn haze, too dim for comfort, yet too bright for stealth. He pulls his leather jacket tighter against the freezing air. Behind him, mechanics work in silence, their breath rising like steam from an overworked engine. Mertens feels the tension tightening inside the hangar. Every man knows the truth but refuses to say it. Their last 5 missions ended in disaster. Not because of poor planning, not because of Allied fighter skill, but because the Americans always knew. Tonight, he hopes, will be different. Captain, a mechanic whispers, handing him a clipboard. Radio checks out, but jamming is stronger. More interference than before. Merton's jaw tightens. They thought Allied jamming was just noise, static, and inconvenience. Now they realize it's a net, a deliberate, engineered net. He climbs into the cockpit, flicks the battery switch, and watches the gauges come alive. But before he can roll onto the runway, the base's early warning siren wails. Mechanics freeze. Officers stare. Everyone knows that sound. It means their position has already been compromised. By whom? Or rather, by what? A junior officer runs up to Mertens, shouting over the alarm. "Americans! They're inbound already! Before we even warmed the engines!" Mertens feels the icy grip of realization. The Allies aren't reacting. They're predicting. "Scramble! Scramble!" he roars, but inside he knows they are already too late. Cut to 30 miles west, RAF West Malling, England. A pair of Mosquito Nuv 17s roar into the sky, their twin Merlins slicing through morning haze. Inside the lead aircraft, radar operator Henry Collins stares at the eerie pulsing certainty on his AI Mark 10 radar screen. 300 miles away, a Luftwaffe squadron warms up, still on the ground. He can see them, through the weather, through the darkness, through the horizon itself. The radar picks up heat signatures, propeller movement, atmospheric displacement. A cocktail of technological triumph no German engineer ever imagined possible. "Got our friends in Chèvre," Collins says, tapping a glowing blip. "Still warming up. They'll panic when they see us." The pilot, Flight Lieutenant Arthur Hale, gives a dry chuckle. They always do. He banks the Mosquito southwest, pushing the engines into a steady war cry. Their aircraft glides like a shadow with purpose, unseen yet all-seeing. Meanwhile, over Belgium, Oberfeldwebel Matthias Eckhart sprints toward his fighter. Snow sprays under his boots. Each breath feels like inhaling ice. He throws himself into the cockpit and slams the canopy shut. The engine sputters, coughs, whines. "Hurry! Hurry!" Suddenly, a mechanic bangs on the fuselage, yelling, "Get out! They're here!" Eckhart looks up. Two dark shapes descend from the clouds, silent, until they open fire. The first mosquito strafes the runway with precise bursts, hitting fuel drums and ripping the landing lights to shreds. The second mosquito rolls into position like a predator circling wounded prey. Eckhart stares in horror. How did they know? The base sirens wail again, not as warning, but as lament. He presses his forehead against the glass. They see everything. Back at the Allied radar headquarters, Lieutenant Sarah Whitmore removes her headset, stretching her neck. Hours of monitoring, tracking, and calculating have molded her into a quiet instrument of victory. She watches an officer write on a chalkboard. Chievra Air Base, 7 aircraft destroyed, 5 damaged on runway, 0 Allied losses. The numbers mean little to her now, just another tally. But in Germany, those numbers mean panic. Reports flow across Luftwaffe Command. Enemy intercepted before takeoff. Night fighters destroyed on ground. Allied aircraft attacked before we launched. They have a system we cannot break. General Josef Kammhuber, architect of Germany's once feared night defense system, reads the reports in disbelief. His face goes pale. The defensive line he built, the Kammhuber line, is collapsing. Overwhelmed not by numbers, but by invisible eyes. Eyes powered by microwaves, oscillators, cathode tubes. Eyes carried by planes, ships, towers, and even trucks. Eyes Germany cannot blind. For the first time in the war, a realization spreads through the Luftwaffe like poison. They are no longer hunters. They are being hunted, before they even leave the ground. Section 4. The night the Luftwaffe lost the sky. March 15th, 1944. 23:47 p.m. Stuttgart, Germany. Luftwaffe Command Bunker. The generator hums beneath the concrete floor as maps are unfurled and ashtrays overflow with cigarette butts. Officers crowd around the operations table. Their faces flicker under the harsh glow of fluorescent lamps. General Josef Kammhuber stands motionless, jaw set, eyes fixed on the incoming stream of reports. RAF bombers, again before we launched, an adjutant mutters, voice trembling. Sir, they knew our patrol routes, our timing, even our decoy positions. Kammhuber slams his fist on the table. That is impossible. We rotated frequencies. We moved our Jägerlight bunkers. He stops. Every officer in the room is staring at him with the same silent truth. The Allies see everything. Across the room, a radio operator removes his headset slowly, like someone touching a wound. Sir, new intercept. British transmissions. They're calling it window. Kammhuber closes his eyes. The cursed strips of aluminum foil. Radar jamming chaff. The invention he warned Berlin about, and was ignored. Now it blinds German radar, while Allied radar cuts through the night with surgical precision. He whispers, "Tonight, we lose the sky." Cut to RAF Bomber Command, Lancaster Group No. 5. Night black Lancasters rumble through the darkness, engines vibrating the very bones of the air. Flares ignite over Stuttgart like slow-burning suns. Inside Lancaster ED-937, Flight Lieutenant James Rowe narrows his eyes at the glowing radar screen. H2S, the Allied ground mapping miracle. Below, the city looks like a living map. Factories, rail junctions, the river's quiet curve. Rowe speaks softly into the intercom. Target locked. They can't hide tonight. The bombardier releases. Bomb bay doors open like the jaws of a giant. Payloads drop. The sky flashes white. Anti-aircraft guns roar but fire blind. their operators swinging wildly, shooting at ghosts. Ro's crew watches the chaos below, then the radio crackles, calm, deadly. Enemy night fighters detected on ground. No intercepts inbound. Proceed. The entire crew shares the same stunned look. The Luftwaffe? Grounded? Impossible. And yet, here they are, flying untouched, like they own the night. Elsewhere, Stuttgart Airfield. Oberleutnant Fritz Adler sprints across the tarmac, boots slipping on wet concrete. The explosions shake the air as he grabs a ladder and climbs into his Me-110. "Start engines!" he shouts, but his chief mechanic shakes his head violently. "Sir, the radars are blinded. We have no vectors. We don't know where they are." Another explosion tears through a hangar. Adler grips the cockpit frame, panting. "We launch anyway." "To where?" the mechanic screams. "They see us before we see them. We're flying blind." Adler hesitates. He watches flares illuminate the airfield, revealing crumpled aircraft, shattered fuel trucks, and men running in frantic zigzags. Above them, bomber silhouettes glide like silent giants, untouched. This is what defeat looks like. A mechanic near the runway falls to his knees, shouting into the sky. "How do they always know?" Back in the Allied radar truck, northern France. In a mobile tracking station, Corporal Evelyn Marks adjusts her headphones, listening to layered frequencies. She pushes her glasses up her nose and makes marks on a rolling chart. Her operator partner, Sergeant Will Dawson, smiles dryly. "They still haven't scrambled." "Can you blame them?" she answers. "We've been reading them like a children's book." Dawson laughs quietly, but there's no joy in it, only inevitability. He circles a location on the map. Another night, another base neutralized, without us firing a shot. Marks nods. "Invisible victories," she whispers. Then she glances at the clock. 23:59. The night the Luftwaffe thought they would reclaim the sky. She looks at Dawson. Is the night they learned they never would. Berlin, Luftwaffe High Command. A furious Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring storms into the war room, face red with rage, uniform straining against his bulk. Officers snap to attention. Göring slams a report onto the table. "RAF attack predicted. Night fighters grounded. Is this a joke?" Silence. No one speaks. No one can. Because this fact is now undeniable. Germany's Air Force has lost the element of surprise forever. Their movements are no longer secret. Their bases no longer safe. Their launches no longer sudden. Every attempt to move, attack, or defend is anticipated by machines Germany insisted were scientifically impossible. Göring looks around the room, face pale. "What kind of enemy sees planes that haven't even taken off yet?" No one answers, because every man here knows the truth. The Germans are fighting an enemy with a new weapon, the ability to see the future. Section 5. The radar wall that broke the Luftwaffe's back. April 3rd, 1944. English Channel, 2:11 a.m. A cold mist rolls over the black water as a convoy of British and American ships creeps silently through the moonless night. Above the deck of HMS Vigilant, a bulky spinning radar antenna sweeps across the darkness like a lighthouse made of electricity. Inside the cramped radar room, illuminated by dim red lamps, Petty Officer Samuel Reeves runs his finger along the curved glass of the PPI display, the iconic radar scope. Blips shimmer, dance, and multiply in arcs. Behind him, Commander Alfred Merriweather watches with folded arms. "Are those German night fighters?" he asks. Reeves nods. "Just took off from Juvincourt 2 minutes ago." Merriweather raises a brow. before they even reached full climb? Aye, sir. Reeves adjusts the gain, sharpening the echoes. Then he smirks, and they're heading straight into a trap. The commander pats his shoulder. Relay to Group 85. Tell the mosquitoes their dinner is served. The room buzzes with controlled excitement. There is no cheering, no bravado, just the quiet satisfaction of men wielding a weapon that cannot be seen, cannot be outrun, and cannot be outsmarted. Cut to above northern France, Mosquito Night Fighter, 2:47 a.m. The de Havilland Mosquito lurks just below cloud level, engines a soft hum, its radar operator hunched over the glowing AI MKX screen. Each dot on his display is a living enemy pilot who has no idea he's being stalked. Target at 1 o'clock, closing fast. He doesn't see us. Flying Officer Arthur Lane, gripping the control column, whispers, "Switch to gunsight radar. Steady. Steady." The ME-110 ahead waddles through the night sky, unaware that death is 4 seconds behind him. The Mosquito pilot squeezes the trigger. 2 streams of 303 tracers leap forward, curving slightly in the wind before slicing the German fighter open. Flames spit from its engine. The aircraft spirals downward, trailing fire like a falling comet. Lane exhales slowly. That's one. The radar operator taps the screen. 2 more coming up from the south. Our boys on the ships saw them before they took off. Lane smiles grimly. Poor sods. It is now a hunt, not a battle. German fighters fly blind into an enemy with eyes on every horizon. Meanwhile, Luftwaffe Air Defense Headquarters, Metz. Major Hans Bremer paces the floor, jacket unbuttoned, cigarette shaking between his fingers. He leans over a map, its surface stabbed with red markers. "Every night, it's the same," he mutters. "Our night fighters never even see the bombers." A radio operator calls out, "Major Bremer, new report from Frankfurt Station. Shadow contacts over the airfield before launch." Bremer grinds the cigarette into an ashtray. Shadow contacts, ghost signals, invisible watchers. The words have become routine, yet no one understands them. German scientists offer explanations: atmospheric anomalies, interference, faulty equipment. But these are lies they tell themselves to stay sane. Bremer stares at the report. "They knew again before we left the ground." His voice cracks. "How can we fight an enemy who is already there before we begin?" Back to England, the coastal radar wall. Dawn breaks over the southern coast of England, lighting up a line of massive metal towers standing like sentinels. These are the Chainholme and Chainholme Low stations, the world's first integrated radar network. Wave after wave of electromagnetic signals pulse outward, sweeping the channel and reaching deep into occupied Europe. In one tower, WAAF radar operator Emily Foster flips through her notebook, pages filled with altitude estimates, bearing lines, and echo delays. She logs a new contact. 2 Ju-88s taking off from Orléans, probably reconnaissance. Her supervisor, Flight Officer Nigel Hargreaves, looks over her shoulder. "Time until intercept." "Approximately 13 minutes, sir." He nods. "Plenty." He radios RAF controller station. "Vector Mosquito Squadron 96. New targets detected, before they've even reached pattern altitude." There is no drama in his voice, no urgency, just procedure. The Allies have made the extraordinary routine. Berlin, Technical Warfare Division, 7:22 a.m. A group of exhausted German scientists gathers around a chalkboard. Equations fill every inch. Dr. Kurt Schellenberg, head of signal interception, rubs his temples. Impossible, he mutters, for radar to see that far? Through weather? Through our countermeasures? He looks up at his team. Unless the British have created multiple overlapping networks, land-based, ship-based, airborne. He steps back from the board, chalk trembling in his hand, and tied them all together. Everyone freezes. One man drops his pencil. The first real-time integrated air defense system in history, Schellenberg whispers. He circles 2 words on the board. Total coverage. The room goes silent, because they all now understand. The war in the air is over, not lost in dogfights, but in laboratories, in command posts, on coastlines, and in the shadows of radio waves. The Luftwaffe still has pilots, still has planes, still has courage, but none of it matters. Not when the enemy sees them, before they exist. Section 6. When radar became a weapon. April 28, 1944, 20:16 p.m., RAF Coltish Hall, England. The sun has dipped below the horizon, leaving a smear of red over the Norfolk fields. In a dimly lit operations room, the glow of radar screens paints the faces of young WAF operators in shades of green. Sergeant Margaret Lewis adjusts her headphones, listening to the rhythmic pulse of distant echoes. Her fingers glide over the controls with the sharp precision of someone who has spent hundreds of hours battling invisible enemies. She freezes. A new contact appears, faint but steady. She leans toward her supervisor. "Sir, airborne units leaving Gilsarian Airfield." The officer raises a brow. "Already? They're early tonight." Margaret rewinds the sweep, measures the echo delay, recalculates. "No, sir. These are not patrols. This is a full formation." The officer's face tightens. "Alert fighter command." A runner rushes to the comms table. Within seconds, phones ring across the building like a chain reaction of lightning. One operator scribbles coordinates on a chalkboard. "German fighters detected, 230 miles out. Before climb complete." A hum of controlled electricity fills the room. Radar isn't just a shield anymore. It's a sword. Cut 2, above the North Sea. Mosquito Hunter Team, 20:38 p.m. The Mosquito night fighter arcs over the dark water, its sleek wooden frame glistening with condensation. Inside, Pilot Officer Thomas Grant glances at his radar operator. "Talk to me, Evans." Corporal Peter Evans studies the glowing blips on the AI screen, heart pounding. "They're still climbing, still not at altitude. They don't know we're coming." Grant smiles. "Good. Let's make history." He pushes the throttle. The twin Merlins roar to life, propelling the aircraft into a climbing turn. Evans taps the screen. "Range closing. You have visual in 30 seconds. Grant flips a switch. His radar gunsight sparks alive. Ahead, 3 German Ju-88s fly in tight formation, still adjusting their throttle mixtures. Their navigation lights faint flickers in the murky sky. Grant inhales slowly. He lines up the shot and fires. The first Ju-88 bursts in a bloom of flame, disintegrating as debris tumbles into the sea. The second panics, banking sharply. The third climbs too fast and stalls. Evans murmurs, "They never had a chance." Meanwhile, Luftwaffe Forward Air Command, Rotterdam. Sirens wail across the base as officers rush to their stations. The operations room is chaotic, maps being moved, phones ringing off the hook, code sheets scattered across tables. Captain Wilhelm Vogt bursts in, gasping for breath. "Report! What happened to our reconnaissance group?" A shaken radio operator stammers, "Contact lost, immediately after takeoff." Vogt's eyes widen. "They were intercepted? That quickly?" "Yes, sir, before they reached 800 meters." The captain slams his fist on the radio console. Verdammt! How is this possible? How do they always know? A young officer steps forward, voice trembling. Sir, some say the British can see through the clouds, that their aircraft can see through the dark. Vogt glares at him. And you believe fairy tales? But deep inside, the officer knows it's not fairy tales. It's science. Science the Reich underestimated. Cut 2, Allied Scientific Center, Telecommunications Research Establishment, TRE, Malvern, England. A cavernous laboratory hums with activity. Oscilloscopes flicker, cathode ray tubes pulse, and engineers in white coats work under clusters of wiring and copper coils. Dr. Alan Blakely leans over a massive blueprint labeled Radar Interception Grid, European Theater. His colleague, Dr. Fiona Clark, points to a series of overlapping arcs. This is the future of warfare. Not bullets, not bombs. Information. Blakely nods. With every sweep, every echo, every reflection, we steal the Luftwaffe's advantage. The lab falls silent for a moment as both scientists watch a demonstration. A small model of a German aircraft being tracked in real time by a rotating antenna. Blakely breathes. We don't just detect them. He turns to Clark. We predict them. Back to Germany. Luftwaffe interviews, Bavaria. Veteran night fighter pilot Heinz Müller sits on a wooden crate, helmet in hand, staring into the distance. He speaks softly to a war correspondent. It used to be our sky, our rules. We attacked when we wanted. We disappeared when we wanted. He looks up, but now they see us rise. They see us climb. They see us turn. They see us think. He grips his helmet tighter. How do you fight an enemy who follows you like a ghost? How do you shoot at something you cannot see? The correspondent lowers his notepad, speechless, because everyone knows the truth. Radar is no longer a tool. It is a weapon Germany cannot counter, a weapon reshaping the war. England, Radar HQ, Portsmouth. Margaret Lewis marks the end of her shift. She removes her headset and rubs her eyes. Another night saved, another formation intercepted, another airfield protected. Her commander approaches. You know, Sergeant, pilots get the glory, bombers get the headlines. But without you, he gestures to the vast radar room around them. None of them make it home. Margaret smiles faintly. Sir, we're just doing our part. He nods. But your part is changing the world. She turns back to the radar screen, the silent heartbeat of a new kind of warfare, and she whispers, let them come. We'll see them before they ever know. Radar Section 7. The night Germany finally understood. They had lost the skies. May 10th, 1944, 23:47 p.m. Luftwaffe Air Base, Stade, Germany. The storm clouds hang low over the runway like a warning. Wind rattles the corrugated metal walls of the hangars, carrying the smell of fuel, oil, and damp earth. Mechanics work under flickering lamps, tightening bolts on Bf-110 night fighters, their shadows stretching long across the concrete. Inside the command shack, a small group of Luftwaffe officers huddle over a map illuminated by a single dull bulb. Major Albrecht Kruger taps the paper with a pencil. Tonight we strike London again. We launch in staggered waves. Surprise is our only chance. A lieutenant clears his throat. Sir, with respect, there is no more surprise. Every group we send, Kruger slams the table. We must try. We have orders. He pushes past the officers, steps outside and gazes into the stormy sky. Lightning flickers. He mutters under his breath. They cannot see through this. But he doesn't believe it. Not anymore. 23:59 p.m. Runway. Engines roar to life as the first wave taxis forward. The air shimmers with heat and rain as propellers churn the storm. Pilot Heinrich Voss, a tired man barely 30, wipes sweat from his brow inside the cockpit. He presses his gloved hand against the canopy glass. "Tonight, please, just let us get there." Tower control gives the signal. The fighters surge down the runway, wheels lifting into the blackness. But the moment they break through the clouds, they are seen. Far away, 0:04 a.m. RAF Bawdsey, England, radar station. The chain-home operator watches in silence as a cluster of new echoes appears, each one blooming onto the screen like a drop of ink on paper. "Multiple bogeys, altitude rising, still over Germany." She calls out the coordinates. The duty officer scribbles notations on a plot board. A runner bursts into the next room. "Tell Fighter Command, Germany has launched a raid." Sirens begin to howl across southeastern England. Within minutes, British and American night fighters take to the air, climbing through the darkness like steel phantoms. The radar net follows the Germans every second, every turn, every climb, every hesitation, and transmits all of it to the hunters. 00:22 a.m., upper atmosphere, over the North Sea. The Luftwaffe formation pushes through turbulence. Rain hammers the canopies. Lightning illuminates their wings in brilliant white flashes. Voss tries to steady his breathing, glancing at his instruments. Stay tight, he murmurs. Suddenly, tracer fire streaks past his cockpit, thin white lines cutting the darkness. "Enemy fighters! They're already here!" someone screams over the radio. Chaos erupts. A Mosquito night fighter slices through the formation like a knife. Its 20mm cannons light up, tearing into a Bf-110. The German plane spirals downward, trailing fire, disappearing into the storm. Voss banks hard. They knew exactly where we were." Another voice yells, "They were waiting for us. This is impossible. They see us in the dark." One by one, German aircraft vanish from the sky. 00:38 a.m. Luftwaffe Air Defense Headquarters, Berlin. Officers stare in disbelief at the situation map. Red lights flash. Chalk lines zigzag across Europe. A communications officer shouts, "Sir, we're losing planes faster than they can report contact." General Hans von Richter, a stern veteran with deep lines carved into his forehead, grips the edge of the table. "What do you mean, faster?" "Sir, they're gone. No distress calls, no sightings, just gone." Another officer whispers, "They are being hunted from their own runways." Richter looks up slowly. That means... He stops, unable to finish the sentence. Everyone in the room already knows. Radar supremacy. Total Allied vision. German blindness. The Luftwaffe, once the terror of Europe, is now flying with its eyes closed. 1:04 a.m. Over England. A lone German fighter, bullet-riddled and limping, descends over the English coast. The cockpit fills with smoke. Voss fights the stick, exhausted, terrified. He knows he will never reach home. The engine sputters. The aircraft drops into a field, skidding violently before flipping onto its side. British Home Guard rush across the field with lanterns. They pull Voss from the wreckage. He coughs, soaked, shivering. A British sergeant kneels beside him. "You're lucky you're alive." Voss stares up into the lantern light, dazed. He whispers, "You saw us before we even took off." The sergeant simply nods, because it's true. Later, British interrogation room. Voss sits across from Wing Commander Edward Hill, a calm man with silver hair and sharp eyes. A cup of tea steams between them. Hill leans back. We followed your entire raid from the moment your wheels left the ground. We knew your altitude, your speed, your spacing. He pauses. There was never any chance of surprise. Voss feels something inside him collapse. The last fragile piece of the myth he was raised to believe. He murmurs, "Then the war is over. We just haven't admitted it yet." Hill doesn't smile. He simply replies, "Radar ended the Luftwaffe long before D-Day ever began." And for the first time, Voss believes it. He has seen the future, and the future belongs to whoever can see first. Section 8. The Technology That Won the War. June 1st, 1944, 5:12 a.m. RAF Bentley Priory, England, nerve center of Allied air defense. The sky outside is pale with the first hints of dawn, but inside the command bunker the air is electric. Dozens of women from the WAAF glide their plotting sticks across a giant map of Britain. Chalk markers move, telephones ring, and a constant hum of voices mixes with the drone of machinery. At the far end of the room, Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding stands silently, hands clasped behind his back. His eyes track the movement of colored wooden blocks that represent enemy aircraft. Except today, there are almost none. The Luftwaffe raids have dwindled to a trickle, not because Germany stopped fighting, but because Germany stopped believing it could win in the air. Radar did this. Not a new plane, not a new weapon, not a new tactic. A lattice of steel towers, humming transmitters, oscillating beams, and the math of 1,000 dedicated operators. 5:24 a.m., Chainholm Station, Dover Cliffs. The technician adjusts the dials on a massive cathode ray tube, the screen flickering softly in the dim light. Outside, the morning wind howls across the chalk cliffs. A young operator named Billy Rowan leans forward, scanning for anomalies. His uniform is wrinkled, his eyes tired, but he never looks away. He knows. He might be the first person in Britain to see an invasion coming. Behind him, the 350-foot steel towers rise into the sky like skeletal giants. Their rotating fields sweep across the channel, bouncing signals off anything that moves. Anything. A seagull. A British patrol plane. A German bomber lifting its wheels off a French runway. Rowan whispers, "Come on, come on." But nothing appears, and that silence, that blessed emptiness, is the sound of victory. 6:03 a.m., Luftwaffe Radar Development Center, Germany. Colonel Kurt Holstein stares at the Allied reports spread across his desk. Intelligence summaries, captured equipment analyses, high-altitude photographs of British radar towers. It all points to one horrifying truth. Germany is decades behind. He rubs his temples. "When did they build all this?" he mutters. A junior engineer, no more than 22, answers timidly, "Before the war, sir. They started before anyone." Holstein slams his fist into the table. "Then we never stood a chance." He sweeps a radar blueprint aside. "No wonder our fighters die the moment they leave the ground. No wonder our night raids vanish over the sea." He looks at a photo of RAF fighters lined wingtip to wingtip. They always knew exactly where we were. The young engineer says nothing. There is nothing left to say. 6:47 a.m., Allied radar-controlled intercept, English Channel. High above the calm morning water, a British Mosquito banked gracefully, sunlight glinting off its twin engines. Inside, the radio crackles. "Victor Lead, this is ground control. Bandit at your 270, Angels 15. Turn left 8 degrees. You'll intercept in 90 seconds. The pilot nods. On the horizon, a lone German reconnaissance aircraft plods toward France, unaware it has been visible since its takeoff roll. The mosquito descends behind a cloud layer, silent, patient. It doesn't matter how skilled the German pilot is. He cannot escape what he cannot see. Moments later, the mosquito's cannons flare. The enemy plane spirals downward, trailing smoke. The intercept took less than 3 minutes, and radar did nearly all the work. 7:10 a.m., U.S. Radar Command, Normandy, preparations. In a makeshift operations tent filled with maps, radios, and coffee mugs, American officers finalized the deployment of mobile SCR-584 radar units for the upcoming Normandy landings. Major Frank Lawson stands over a table cluttered with antenna diagrams. "These units will track everything," he says. "German aircraft, artillery shells, even V-1 rockets." A corporal asks, "Sir, will the Germans know?" Lawson shakes his head. "They won't understand what hit them." Outside, engineers fine-tune radar trailers, calibrating oscillators and tightening bolts. Diesel generators rumble. Men haul cables across muddy ground. These machines, squat, angular, unremarkable, will determine life and death for thousands on D-Day. Radar will call in naval guns. Radar will guide fighters. Radar will spot counterattacks. Radar will see what human eyes never could. 7:45 a.m. Luftwaffe Forward Operations Bunker, France. A German radar operator watches his antiquated Freya screen flicker uncertainly. The device hums, buzzes, and loses contact every few seconds. He tries again. Nothing. He bangs the side of the console. Still nothing. His commanding officer leans in. "Where are the enemy ships? Where are their aircraft?" The operator's voice trembles. "Sir, the system can't detect them. The Allies are jamming everything." A chilling silence fills the bunker. Electronic warfare, radar denial, signal disruption. The Allies haven't just mastered radar. They've mastered the battlefield that radar creates. 8:10 a.m. British War Cabinet briefing. Prime Minister Winston Churchill listens as his scientific advisors outline the state of electronic warfare. "Gentlemen," one physicist says proudly, "we no longer fight in darkness. We see the enemy before he sees himself." Churchill nods gravely. He turns to his generals. "Radar," he says, "has given us the eyes of God." The room falls silent, because everyone in it knows. That statement is not an exaggeration. 8:32 a.m. Airfield outside Portsmouth. Hundreds of Allied planes warm their engines for the largest invasion in history. Pilots strap in. Mechanics rush between aircraft. Radios crackle. Commanders shout final orders. Above them, radar antennas sweep methodically. Back and forth, watching, measuring, predicting. Every movement of every German unit will be tracked. Every Luftwaffe response will be intercepted. Every surprise attack will fail before it begins. Radar isn't just supporting D-Day. Radar is protecting it. 9 a.m. Final realization. On the other side of the channel, in a quiet interrogation room, the captured German pilot Heinrich Voss sits alone. He hears distant British aircraft taking off, dozens of engines rumbling like rolling thunder. He whispers, "They see everything." And for the first time he understands completely. The war wasn't lost in the factories or the skies or the trenches. It was lost the moment Germany entered a battle against an enemy who could follow every step, every breath, every takeoff, long before a single bomb fell. Radar didn't just win the air war. It ended the idea that Germany could ever win at all.